So every year, right on schedule, these big lists come out telling us which universities are the best. We see them everywhere, right? And they have this huge influence on one of the biggest decisions we'll ever make. They're a really powerful force in education, but are they actually a force for good? I mean, think about it. We trust these lists for a massive life investment. But that begs a pretty serious question. What if the very thing we're trusting is flawed? What if these rankings aren't just a little off, but are actually pushing higher education down the wrong path entirely? And that brings us to this obsession we all seem to have with the rankings. It's turned into this high stakes annual race where getting that number one spot, or even just cracking the top 10, feels like everything. And you better believe universities are spending a fortune to get there.
And the stakes? Oh, they are incredibly high. The amount of money involved is just staggering. Some universities are spending over $100 million a year. And that's not on better classes or student life. It's on marketing, on things specifically designed to make them look better and climb up that list.
And when you look at the top of these lists, it's always the same names, isn't it? The usual suspects. These schools have basically become synonymous with the best, and their positions just feel locked in, which of course just makes us believe in the authority of the rankings even more. All right, so let's pull back the curtain a little bit. When a university snags that top spot, what have they really won? What are these lists actually measuring anyway? This is really the core of it all. We just assume these rankings are all about the quality of education you're going to get. But, well, when you start digging into the details, a totally different story starts to unfold. And here it is, the fundamental disconnect. On one side, you've got what the rankings measure. Things like endowment size, which is basically just how big the university's bank account is, or research citations. On the other side, well, you have what most students and their families are actually looking for. Awesome teaching, real support for getting a job, a great campus culture. And there's a huge gap between those two things. So the proof is right here in the numbers. Look at this typical formula. A massive 40% can be based on reputation surveys, which are pretty much just popularity contests among academics. Meanwhile, the stuff that really matters to students, like teaching quality or what happens after you graduate, often gets crammed into a tiny little slice of the score. The whole system is just heavily weighted toward how rich and famous a school is, not the actual student experience. So, what does all this lead to? Well, it leads to a pretty powerful, maybe even radical idea. If the game is rigged, maybe the answer isn't to just try harder to win it. Maybe we need to change the rules of the game itself. Now, it's really easy to just blame the universities for chasing these numbers. But what if they're just playing the game we've created for them? What if the real problem isn't with them at all? What if the problem is the ruler itself? The ranking systems that force schools into this competition over things that have almost nothing to do with their actual mission, to educate people. And that really is the central message put as plainly as possible. If we genuinely want to make higher education better, the very first, most effective thing we can do is challenge the power of the rankings themselves. So what would that even look like? What could higher education be like if success was defined by something more meaningful than just a number on a list? Imagine this. Freed from that ranking rat race, universities could take those hundreds of millions of dollars and pour them back into what truly matters. They could actually reward and develop amazing teachers, encourage risky, genuine innovation instead of just safe research that gets citations, focus on helping their local communities, and, most importantly, put the well-being and success of their students first. When you step back, this whole conversation forces us to ask a much bigger, much deeper question, one that gets to the very heart of why these places even exist. So let's boil it all down. What are the big takeaways here? First, rankings have this almost hypnotic power over how we judge a university's quality. Second, what they're often measuring is how wealthy a school is, not how good the student experience is. And finally, if you want real change, the most direct way to get it is to challenge the ranking system itself. Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. If we stop using a single number to define a university's value, how do we measure it instead? What is the true worth of an education, and how can we build a system that actually reflects that?